This day, Holy Saturday, is usually a quiet and indeed a somber day in our churches. The altar is stripped, the crucifix is veiled, and most significantly, the tabernacle is empty. We are, as it were, sitting by the tomb, waiting. If you had visited the friary on Holy Saturday this time last year, it would still be still and quiet, but you'd hear the shuffling of people in and out of the confessional as they celebrated the sacrament of penance in preparation for Easter. This year, in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, our churches are quieter still. In our families and in our communities, we've been experiencing a sense of helplessness and anxiety. Our familiar spaces have shrunk. Our ordinary interactions are limited. The mood outside the church and the mood inside are oddly alike. Those who have lost a loved one in these past few weeks have had to walk a very lonely road of bereavement. And we others have had to stifle our natural instinct to reach out, to be physically present, to walk with the bereaved, to offer a hand or an embrace. We are experiencing our impotence, our fragility, and we're all wondering how long we will have to live in this in-between space. Each Holy Saturday, the Church occupies the in-between space. Spiritually, we are waiting by the tomb. We naturally think of Our Lady and the disciples on this day because they felt powerfully the raw, numbing pain of the crucifixion. What could they do except shed tears and sit by the tomb? And because they were believers, they hoped. They still kept faith in God, who always keeps his promises. The universal experience of loss means that we can prayerfully share this day of grief and hope with Mary, with the holy women, and with the apostles. We can enter into their moment of grief and hope. We can, for example, recite the sorrowful mysteries of the Rosary today as an example to unite ourselves with Mary in her grief and in her hope. But what of Christ? An ancient homily for Holy Saturday begins with the words, "What is happening? Today there is a great silence over all the earth, a great silence and stillness. A great silence because the King sleeps. The earth was in terror and was still, because God slept in the flesh and raised up those who were sleeping from the ages. God has died in the flesh, and the underworld has trembled." Today, the Church speaks about Christ's descent to hell. What does it mean to say that Jesus died, that he descended to hell? In the Old Testament, the realm of death is called Sheol. Sheol is a shadowy place. It is, in fact, the exact opposite to what the Hebrews understood God to be. For God is always giving life. God is creator. God's love heals and restores what's broken. In Sheol, the dead are cut off from the presence of the living God. It is a place of utter silence. No communication is possible. There is no fellowship. no community, and no love. And of course, in Sheol, there is no praise of God. And so the psalmist says in Psalm 6, "Turn, O Lord, save my life. Deliver me for the sake of your steadfast love. For in death, no one remembers you. In the grave, who can give you praise?" To be in Sheol is to be abandoned. The dead who are in Sheol are abandoned. There's a complete breakdown of relationship, which is what we understand sin to be. For sin is a living death, a sundering of love, a breaking of relationship. In sin, we experience alienation. The healing communication between God the Creator and the creature is drowned out by the static, the white noise of sin. And that is what Christ came to save us from, our own willful turning away from the source of life. In the Old Testament, to live is to praise. Life and praise go hand in hand. To go to Sheol is to lose the joy of giving thanks, to lose the possibility of relationship or communication. In the ancient homily I mentioned, and in many other texts and Christian images, Holy Saturday is associated with Jesus' triumphant entry into the place of the dead, into Sheol. It's been called the harrowing of hell. We can think of Christ, as the ancient Christians did, like a mighty warrior, breaking through the doors of hell, taking Adam and Eve, our first parents, by the hand and leading them into freedom. So one way to imagine Christ on Holy Saturday is to think of the divine rescue mission. Jesus, our champion, already breaking the power of death and rescuing all those who were under the power of sin and death. Others imagine Christ's descent to the dead not as a triumphal rescue mission, but as Christ sharing in the helpless, hopeless alienation of all who have died. Holy Saturday may be understood as Christ's passive solidarity with all sinners who are held in bondage. We are almost afraid to imagine such love. To imagine Jesus would undergo such alienation, the abandonment of a lost soul. Sin is hatred and separation from God. And St. John says in the prologue, men loved the darkness more than the light. But this cannot be said of Jesus. Jesus lived perfect obedience to the Father, and therefore to suffer the abandonment of the sinner. This is the most extraordinary sign of love. So today, wherever you are, we are invited to keep watch by the sealed tomb. We can reflect on the triumphant victory of Jesus. We can picture Jesus descending to the dead as a conqueror, breaking down its doors and unbinding those who are held prisoner on account of their sin. Or we may reflect on Jesus' passive, helpless solidarity, experiencing fully the abandonment of the sinner. That same abandonment he experienced on the cross. Either way, we are reflecting on something truly amazing, that bottomless ocean of God's love expressed in the death and resurrection of Jesus. Tonight, the Franciscan community here in Athlone will celebrate the Easter Vigil, bringing our waiting by the tomb to an end. The end will be signaled by the lighting of the Easter candle. That light is brought into the church and is a focus for our Easter liturgies. We will also place that light in the friary window as a reminder to all who pass our way that beyond the tomb, beyond all forms of isolation and abandonment, Christ comes to us with a love that heals and saves.